What's up, friendos, and welcome into Fantasy Pros, the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm Chris Welsh, and today we're taking a look at who are the experts drafting. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to use some Fantasy Pros tools to maybe help identify some guys that are slipping through the cracks, or maybe the experts are trying to hide from us. What do they not want us to know? Well, we're going to try to expose it and figure out who those players are. How will we do so? We are going to use ECR, Expert Consensus Ranks, fantasypros.com/rankings. That will tell us the highs, the lows. As well, on the same page, you can find where the ranks are versus ADP. And that'll be a nice key tool that we're going to use here. So we're going to use the highs, lows, the ADPs, and identify some players that the experts are drafting. How else can we use some of these tools? Well, it can tell us some other stuff, like, how about this? How deep is this year's first round? Well, we can take a look. ECR, according to the Expert Consensus Ranks, has 17 players that have a high rank inside the top 10. So 17 top 10 worthwhile players according to ECR, or first round. If you're playing like a 10-team league, we can take a look at that. We dig a little deeper. Only 2 of those players inside the top 17 are pitchers. You can guess, Skubal, Skeens, of course. But Skeens has a high rank of 6 actually the highest ranker has him at 6 overall, where Skubal has a high rank at 1 overall. So what does that tell us? Well, maybe Skubal might have a slight advantage in the eyes of some experts, at least according to the ranks. What that also does, and it might just be that sole number 1 overall rank, it puts Skubal above Paul Skeens in the rank. So ECR showing us some interesting little tricks that might be going on, and maybe experts are leaning a little bit more into what they've known from Tarik Skubal. But if you're drafting in the first round, you can know that there are plenty of worthwhile talent. Maybe also, rankers are telling us that wheel pick is a really good spot. If 17 players can be inside the top 10 of overall ranks, that definitely tells you something. You can peruse more and check it out over at fantasypros.com/rankings. But let's dig into the players that I'm identifying for you. So I got a couple deeper names, and then we're going to dig into the top 100, and we're going to find some players that I agree that experts, like I have a couple of these players that I am drafting, but there's also some that really aren't on my radar, and will tell us what ECR has to say. So let's go take a look at a few of the deeper names that I've identified for you. Number 1, this is one that I do really like. It's Milwaukee Brewers outfielder Garrett Mitchell. Now, Garrett Mitchell has a rank on our ECR of 273. His ADP, about 81 spot difference of 354. Now, I will tell you, there can be some caveats on the variation between ADPs and ranks the deeper you go, and that is why I am going to put a hyper focus on the top 100. But this is still important because even Yahoo has him at an ADP of 322. Now, why is Garrett Mitchell in that territory? Well, 8 homers, 11 stolen bases last year. He hit 253. His strikeouts are still a problem, but he started walking more. He's still barreling. His expected batting average looks like it can start to tick up. Also, he didn't get that launch angle, but all of those things changing this year, you're looking at a potential 2020 projected player, even though some of those underlying stats aren't really telling us a great story. So Garrett Mitchell going much, much later is one of those players that guys are targeting. And another reason why would be that second half. Around 170 at-bats on the back half post-All-Star break last season. He hit 265 after hitting 192 in the first half, 7 homers, 10 stolen bases. So for my group that likes to extrapolate, you look at a 7 homer, 10 stolen base, under 200 at-bat season, you know where that could start to go. So you start to take some of that and you go, there might be 2020 potential in a guy like Garrett Mitchell. He just has to lower the strikeouts. To his credit, he has lowered them 3 straight years while walking more all 3 straight years. But we're going to have to see some big changes. Guys are starting to bet on that now that he's also got a full-time job. So Garrett Mitchell is one of those players that experts are drafting. Another deep one. We don't need to go too crazy into it, but Ryan Presley with the Cubs. Now, part of that is also the late addition, him moving into a closer role, but Even all of that said, he has a rank of 201 according to the expert consensus ranks. Again, that is it's an average of all of the ranks. His ADP is 61 spots higher. Looks to have the gig with the Cubs solidified. The Cubs killing it in spring training, but also look like they're going to be a major contender into this season with the moves that they're making. Kyle Tucker being added and Ryan Pressly being the one that can close the door on all of those games. He is a closer that experts are targeting. Whether anybody believes in the top guys like Emmanuel Clase and Josh Hader and the investment of it, everyone can tell you they want to find later closers, and Ryan Pressly is one of those guys that's being targeted. An interesting little thing I found when peeking around the ADPs versus the ECRs is this player, Isaac Paredes with the Houston Astros. He has a rank of 159, which is 9 spots higher than his ADP. That's pretty good. It's nothing to write home about. It's not something that's going to jump out on any of the ranks pages, but he is the only hitter outside of the top 150 ECR who has a high rank inside the top 100. He's the only hitter. So I'm going to repeat that again. Outside of the top 150, he is the only single hitter that has at least single ranker that is putting him as a top 100 player. Now, why are they doing that? Because of that beautiful short porch in left field, where Paredes last year hit only 19 homers after being traded to the Cubs from the Rays, which was a disadvantage for him, off of a 2023 where he hit 31 homers, and that was a very nice pull-heavy spot. Alex Bregman was able to make work of this. Now Paredes is going to do it. He has a 22-degree launch angle that is kind of paired with a bad hitting profile. Bad barrel, bad hard hit numbers. Those don't look good, but if he just makes contact and gets it in the air, that's where damage is done. He walks a bunch. He doesn't strike out. It's a really good ballpark for him. And again, he has some rankers pushing him incredibly high because this is a great destination for him. So Isaac Paredes, another expert pick a little bit later on. Now we're going to jump into the bigger names, the top 100. I've got some big names for you that experts are drafting, at least that are also showing off of this sheet. But first, you can put a lot of this into action on FantasyPros Draft Simulator. Level up your fantasy baseball draft prep with FantasyPros Mock Draft Simulator. You can complete realistic mock drafts in minutes without waiting between picks, without having anybody there. You can do it. You can actually use FantasyPros system, which is going to use ADP projections and expert consensus ranks to make the picks in between yours. You could knock out 5 drafts in 30 minutes. You can tailor your mock drafts to your league's specific settings, including roster configurations and scoring settings. Receive instant feedback and draft grades to refine your strategy and gain a competitive edge. Prepare confidently and dominate your draft with Mock Draft Simulator today at FantasyPros at fantasypros.com/mock. That's fantasypros.com/mock. Get going with it today. And by the way, you can also do the multi-draft simulator is out there as well. So you don't have to just complete against the robots. If maybe you want to knock out 5 in 30 minutes, you can, but you can also get all of your buddies together, get into the Discords, get into the Fantasy Pros Discord where we're putting mock drafts together and you can draft with friends and frenemies. All right, now let's take a look at some bigger, more top 100 players that stood out. Now, this first player is not a player that I am necessarily in on. And I will tell you, I'm one of the lowest on the ranking side. But maybe some of it is the intangibles that are sitting out there because he does stand out in some ways. It is CJ Abrams with the Washington Nationals. Abrams has a rank of 48, but he's got an ADP 17 spots higher and has an overall top rank. Somebody has him ranked 18 overall in all the land. So even though one ranker has him really high though, which, can skew some of the numbers, almost half of the total rankers have him higher than his ECR number. So why that's important is the ECR is an average. So it wouldn't be shocking that half are higher and half are lower. But when you have some extreme high ranks, in this case, this is a guy that is almost outside the top 50, he's 48, and he has somebody ranking him 18, it wouldn't be out of the norm that maybe 7 people rank him higher and then all of them rank him a tiny bit lower. This is a case where, yes, he has one really high rank, but a majority of the people are quite a bit higher as well. He, in fact, had the third highest ECR versus ADP inside the top 75 of all players. So his differential, his ADP, was the third biggest difference from his ECR inside the top 75. Now, why is that all there? Why is he a pick? 20 homers, 30 stolen bases this past year. We saw hard hit percentage come up. We saw the hitting profile tick up. A lot of people didn't believe in the power. I kind of didn't believe in the power. Well, he hit for more homers. He did steal a little bit less. He looks to be pretty locked into his batting average. It was essentially 246 or 250 or 245, 3 straight seasons. That's what it's been. So I think you could look at him and you can go, wow, he is progressing. 2030 is like close to first or second round talent. My ultimate problem with him is what happened at the end of the season, where he was suspended or kind of knocked from the team for a bit for staying out all hours of the night and gambling. And that is kind of looming over him. But they said he's added weight into the offseason. We don't chase speed like we used to in previous years, but he is one of those guys that has a really great power speed combo. And it's probably fair to say, where you love a guy like Jackson Merrill and then CJ Abrams goes 30 spots lower, is there that big of a difference? It comes in the form of the batting average right now. And unfortunately, his expected stats don't tell us that that's going to improve. Hopefully some of that mental stuff is behind him. I will say his underlying, if you're looking at Baseball Savant, his batting profile, it's pretty blue and below league average kind of across the board. So he really does take advantage of just really great launch angles and great speed. But he stands out where one ranker has him incredibly high, and this looks like a player that experts are drafting. Next up on our list, we are going to go to one of the hot, young hitting prospects, not maybe quite a prospect, but one of the guys that we're going to see in for a full season that some are getting excited about. ADPs, maybe tell a different story. We're talking about Rays Jr. Caminero. Caminero's got a ECR rank of 78. Again, that is the consensus. Some may have higher, I do. Some may have lower, and I'm going to tell you actually about that exactly. One of the fascinating things about him, what I was talking about, the deviation, is the high and the low rank. So another thing that we list is you can see here's the person that's the highest rank. Here's the person that represents the absolute lowest rank. Nobody in the top 100 has a bigger differential between their high and their low than Junior Caminero. Junior Caminero has one ranker at 51. Someone ranks him as the 51st overall player, while another has him as the 206th overall player. And then we meet in the middle to that 78 overall rank. So that is a really, really high differential people trying to figure out. But I think something that can stand out there is you look and you can see that really, really low deviation, yet he is still at 78, ranking 22 spots higher than his ADP, even though someone is out there killing his rank. Now, why is Junior there? Well, in the debut, we saw some of the shining moments. He hit 248, 6 homers. We saw some big hard hit numbers, 45%, which was great. Almost 12% barrel rate was great. And he already put up one of the hardest hit balls in baseball last season, a 116.3, top 2 percentile of the league, max exit velocity. And the expectation for Junior Caminero, after having a really great offseason as well, playing in the Dominican Winter League, shining there, big homers. We've already seen some of the big homers in spring happen, that this was a guy that was hitting for average, not striking out a bunch. And that also showed in the majors, 21.5% K percentage in his major league debut, which is huge. Throw on top of it, you'll be playing a little bit of a potential minor league ballpark. That works well. And that is why people are drafting Junior Caminero. Next up is one I completely agree with, Baltimore Orioles third baseman Jordan Westburg. Jordan Westburg has a rank of 81 and a 21 spot differential from his ADP, so that is very similar to Junior Caminero, another player that ranks much higher than he is actually going, and that is telling us that rankers are making sure they target him. Why? 18 homers last season and just over 400 at bats. He hit 264. His underlying profile looks phenomenal. Top 20 percentile, kind of across the board. Barrel was almost 12%, 46% hard hit rate, better hard hit rate than Junior Caminero. Average exit velocity looked great. And the expected batting average, this is a really key one. He hit 264, an expected batting average of 281. That's great. And They are making left field in Baltimore a little bit more hitter-friendly by bringing in the wall a tiny bit. So the environment becomes a little bit better. The underlying profile is there. People want Jordan Westburg, who's going to have a little bit of position eligibility, and projections look to be in a favorable place. If you get 25-10 out of Jordan Westburg and he's going around 100, that's a value, and experts want to draft him. 3 more for you. This outfielder has been a hot name, but still ADPs and ranks don't quite add up. It is the Athletics, the Sacramento Athletics, Lawrence Butler, whatever we're going to call him. Just try not to say Oakland, I guess. Lawrence Butler has a rank of 66, yet his ADP is 19 spots worse than his rank. Another issue with this, he has the highest deviation of any player inside the top 75. And that is ECR versus ADP when I say that. So the highest differential between his rank and his average draft position inside the top 75, nobody has a higher difference than Lawrence Butler. And probably some of that is still, was the second half real? Even if it wasn't real, he had a horrible first start to his career. Compared to the second half, that still produced 22 homers, 18 stolen bases with a 262 average. You talk about the hitting profile we have with Westburg, it's right there with Lawrence Butler. Lawrence Butler had a 47% hard hit rate, great barrel numbers, expected batting average of 261, and a relatively low strikeout rate, which was lower than what we saw in the minors in the previous season. And it all kind of comes to a head with that second half. He hit only 211 in his first almost 200 at bats. His last 230 or so at bats, he hit 300, not over, but he hit 300, 13 homers, 12 stolen bases in the second half. That looks like a 25-25 guy. Maybe some people are not familiar with the name. People are concerned about it. Experts are ranking him and drafting him because he is going to help the team across the board. And another player that is going to be playing in a minor league ballpark that has some minimal beneficial pieces in the ballpark, a little bit shorter in left field, but also in the summer, it's going to get a little bit hotter. Ball might travel a little bit more. So Lawrence Butler is a player that experts are drafting. All right, we've got 2 last ones for you. And we finally have a pitcher. I am going to identify at least one pitcher in here. Hitters, definitely. There's some small differences on some pitchers. Not a ton stood out. There were 2 in the top 100. I'm going to lock into this one for you. And that pitcher is also a Baltimore Oriole that we talked to just a little bit ago. Grayson Rodriguez, who has a rank of 87. His ADP is 21 spots lower than his rank. He represents the highest deviation from his rank between his ADP of any starting pitcher in the top 100. So that's the biggest difference between those two, as far as like the ECR being so much more than that ADP. Grayson Rodriguez talked very highly in the pitching guide episode between myself and Eno Saris, if you want to see it. Last year, a 3.86 ERA, struck out 130 in 116 innings. 26.5 K percentage, walks dropped almost a full walk percentile year over year. His expected ERA was 3.72, and the expectation is he is going to move into that number 1 role with more innings. The strikeouts are going to get there, and he is going to be a dog. Grayson Rodriguez is definitely a pitcher that a lot of experts are trying to get into their rotation because he can end up being an SP3, maybe even an SP4 in some builds, especially when the ADP is closer to 100, and he has got some maximum upside, some real 200 plus strikeout potential, and people are betting on the young Grayson Rodriguez to take that next step, and experts, they want to draft him. Final name on the list, and I'm going to tell you, this is surprising to me a little bit. This name I think is going to surprise you, but when we are looking in the world of rankers versus average draft position, I am actually on the side of wanting this player. I just really didn't think that he was going to show up here. This player is White Sox, at least for now, Luis Robert. Luis Robert has a rank of 76 on our ECR with an ADP of 111. Now, I will tell you, there's a slight caveat to this because he is being held down by ESPN. ESPN, their rank alone or their ADP alone is definitely pushing, the overall ADP down. But he had the biggest ECR versus ADP difference inside the top 100 again, kind of due to that. But I also believe his rank is lower than every single site's ADP that we track as well. So that's always kind of a key denominator. Now, why is he that guy? Because he had a really poor season. 224, his expected batting average was even worse at 210. Struck out 33% of the time. Career worst across the board. Really on almost every metric. He dropped 6% barrel rates. His hard hit dropped to 40. So why? I think a big reason for many is most believe that is the outlier. I kind of fall into that camp. I think a lot of what we saw out of Luis Robert last year was the outlier. He was in rookie ball, then playing for a team that was winning nothing. All of his friends were being traded. There's a lot of extracurricular things we're kind of tying into it. He stunk and still hit 14 homers and had 23 stolen bases in just under 400 at bats. So if you have this new season and health in front of you and maybe a potential trade coming here in the near future, I think you could slightly build in that he might be with a new team. But you can also see that when you look at previous years, he hit 264, 284. He's coming off of a 38 home run season. He stole 20 bases 2 straight years. That this guy outside of the top, 75, he has really true 2020 potential, if not 30-30 potential, or 30-20 potential. Now you can say you got that out of CJ Abrams, but you're getting maybe 40 spots to 50 spots lower because a lot of people do not believe in him. If he stays with the White Sox, the runs and the RBI might struggle. But hey, listen, his rank is one of the biggest differences we see versus ADP. And this is a player that, based on ranks versus those ADPs, experts are targeting Luis Robert. So maybe you can get a smashing deal. Which player of all of these did you love and which did you hate? I'm going to guess Luis Robert's probably going to be at the top. But who do you think, as far as what the experts are drafting, who's your favorite? Junior Caminero, Grayson Rodriguez? Also, let us know who you are targeting. Who do you think that experts need to pick it up? Experts, of course, that you think that they should be targeting. Who's the player that we did not mention that everybody should be drafting? Drop it in the comments below. We're always looking at that, with also opportunities to win great prizes, and maybe you're helping someone else. So drop those comments below. We'd love to see it. And you can check out for yourself at fantasypros.com/rankings. You can take a look at where each expert, you can click on the player's name, see who everybody has got them at. You can take a look at versus ADP, the highs and lows, and a bunch more. Plus, we've got a bunch of other incredible stuff over on Fantasy Pros, the Draft Simulator, Draft Kit, Draft Assistant. You can sync your leagues, and you can get all of this great advice helping you live during your drafts. Check it out today. Go over to Fantasy Pros and get hooked up. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. As always, make sure you subscribe to the channel, put notifications on so you don't miss anything. You can follow me on Twitter at IsItTheWelsh if you want more. For Fantasy Pros MLB, I'm Chris Welsh, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye, friends.